Hello and welcome to this online event where we're going to be streaming and showing you the talks of PPC Live 16 that happened in Brighton. It was such a fantastic event and we're so grateful for everyone that showed up there. PPC Live has been going on for 3 years now. We'll be celebrating our 3-year anniversary in July, and this came out of me just wanting to bring together a PPC networking event and bring the community together to learn and share about what is being tested, what people are worrying about, the things that are still not, people are not grasping, to learn from people who are testing it out, people who are finding things successful, whether it's max typing or PMax or just new ways of doing things. So yeah, I'm really grateful to our network, our fantastic speakers. We've got Sam, Sophie, and Antonio, who gave some fantastic talks that you'll be hearing very soon. But first of all, we've got to thank our fantastic sponsors, where first we've got ClickTech, who have supported us and partnered with us for a couple of years now. We also have Genie Goals and Optimizer, two fantastic supports. Genie Goals are a marketing agency based in Cambridge. Optimizer are a very famous tool, PPC tool that helped you to do automating the tasks that you need to do every day very well, founded by Frederick Valles, who's #1 PPC influencer. We also had fantastic generosity come from Naba Hopkins, Peter Guber, James Cogden, Andrea We Discover, Journey Further, and Vervont, who helped with scholarship ticket sponsorship. So really grateful to them. I'd also encourage you guys to check out our overall network, whether it's LinkedIn, our WhatsApp group, our blog. We're also always looking for contributors, or even our mail list. And if you go to our resources page on ppc.live, they're already the slides for the talks that you're about to see here. So the slides that the speakers are going to be going through are already there in the back end. So if you subscribe to our newsletter, you get immediate access to that. So yeah, without further ado, I'll pass over to my wonderful partner in crime for these events, for these online events, Jyll Saskin Gales. Take it away, Jyll.
Thank you, Anu, for kicking off another great PPC Live Online. I'm Jyll Saskin Gales. I use the pronouns she and her. I'm a Google Ads coach and the founder of the Inside Google Ads course, podcast, and this book, my new book. I'm thrilled to welcome these 3 excellent speakers to your small screen on YouTube and LinkedIn for this edition of PPC Live Online. Our first speaker today is also a PPC Zone alum, so I'm thrilled to get the opportunity to see her speak again. Please welcome Sophie Fell to talk to us all about Performance Max.
Cool, so I am here to talk through, thank you very much, AI anxiety, 6 guardrails to tame the beast that is Performance Max. We already did this bit, so we don't have to cover this again. We already said all this is all fine. Fab, so let's talk about where Performance Max all began. So, launched on Google Ads in 2021. It almost feels sooner and also feels like it was like 20 years ago at the same time. But yeah, Google Ads created Performance Max to bring together all the different types of placements and networks, and to really make sure that we stopped wasting budget, spending lots of time, again, this is all in their words, don't know how true it is, but spending time on managing all these separate accounts and campaigns, rather than having one single campaign that generates the conversions that we want and need. Of course, Microsoft Ads followed suit. We all know that. So they came in 2023 with their own answer to Performance Max. But rather than displaying across the Google Display Network, obviously their placements are, I'm making myself laugh, God's sake. Their placements were on kind of some noughties classics places, so like MSN and Outlook and Bing, which I'm sure we all definitely use. If anyone here is from Digilius or Microsoft, please don't kill me. And yeah, really designed to simplify campaign management, consolidate budgets, and bring machine learning to the channel. So we're going to talk about 6 ways to kind of calm the beast that is Performance Max. I don't know if anyone in this room is like a little bit nervous. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because you're all professionals. But I know from working at an agency that some of my clients in particular are still a little bit concerned about using Performance Max. So the first step is to use your first-party data. We all know this. We're all talking a lot about data-driven attribution, data conversions. So using your first-party data and integrating it, importantly, with your Google Ads and Microsoft Ads accounts. Why? We want to train the algorithm towards generating those high quality and high value conversions, and that's something that's really, really important. So there are a few different ways of doing this. What's really important, ideally, is that we have a list of tools. So if it is a static list, that's absolutely fine. Ideally, we would have that full kind of integration between maybe our CRM systems and our platforms. But what we can do in the Performance Max settings, as you can see here, is adjust our bidding to bid for new customers only. Now, again, there are reasons to do this and reasons not to do this. But in order to really generate that kind of incremental value that Performance Max is meant to achieve, only bidding for new customers is probably a pretty good bet. We can also use the data that's generated by kind of Google and Microsoft naturally. So they then build their own audiences of all converters. Again, this is often based on the people that you converted when coming from Google Ads or Microsoft Ads. And we can see there's all different placements where we need those, we need to meet the threshold of 1,000 people for each of these placements, and it is different across search, YouTube, display, and Gmail. And again, on Microsoft, we can utilize our customer match list as well. Now, it's important, this first-party data thing is definitely important, but how we really make the most of it is for e-commerce brands, for example, using enhanced conversions and using that data, we can train the algorithm to generate high quality and relevant conversions at scale. Similarly, for lead gen businesses, B2B businesses, again, it's really, sorry, I got distracted because someone was walking in. It's, again, really, really crucial to, instead of just generating lead volume, generate lead value, right? Train the algorithm to generate more of those leads that are high quality and more likely to convert and are bigger in sales volume as well. Our second guardrail, this is boring, I feel like I can hear some eye rolls. I can hear them. Check your default settings. If you have seen me talk or heard me talk or read anything I've ever said, I will have said this before, and it's because it's really important. So double check any campaign defaults ahead of making campaigns live. Again, we're all PPC professionals. Hopefully we know this, but default settings are a very quick path to subpar campaign performance. So we're going to talk about this one. Again, we all know it, but we're going to talk about this one. We know that as a default, Google will show your ads to people either within or those who are interested in the areas that you've talked about. You can also inadvertently, if you don't set your location settings properly, show ads to absolutely everyone around the world, which very often is a waste of money. So what we want to make sure is that we're showing ads to people that are in or regularly in our included locations. Again, I'm seeing nods, people know this, but it would be remiss of me not to mention it. The other thing that's really important is that by default, Google actually creates, I can't think what it's called off the top of my head right now, but there is asset optimization by default. So again, what we might see are custom headlines, custom descriptions, and custom content that we haven't inputted and we haven't seen or got that visibility of. So again, it's really, really important that we check that, particularly for anyone within a regulated industry. So like finance, health, for example, it's really important that we make sure we're not serving ads that say things that we don't want them to say. And finally, something that's very easy to do, and I have seen time and time again, we can accidentally, in the process of creating Performance Max campaigns, optimize them to generate all conversions, right? Every single type of conversion that we have on our account. In the process of doing this, on the face of it, your Performance Max campaigns might look like they're doing a really great job. But actually what we might find is a lot of add to carts or a lot of newsletter subscriptions or a lot of people looking at product pages. So again, it's really important that when we're looking for conversions and optimizing toward conversions, that we make sure that we're only including the ones that we really want, right? And it's not rare. In fact, the average Google Ads campaign has 3 Performance Max campaigns. So if you want to use Performance Max to generate conversions, but you've got different types of conversions, that's another option you have as well. So generate different campaigns for different conversions to make sure that the ones that you're putting all the money in are generating what you need, your value, your leads, and your sales. Number 3, consider, this is the operative word here, consider using negative keywords and brand exclusions. We want to exclude irrelevant and low quality terms from the get-go. I'm sure no one here who's ever made a campaign, especially now learning anything along the way, would make a search campaign without a single negative keyword. Okay, no one's saying I would, so great. So yeah, you wouldn't run a search campaign without negative, so why would you run a performance max campaign without negative? Well, our good friends at Optimizer, I'm not looking at the people from Optium, sorry, I've already apologized to them. Our good friends at Optimizer have actually shown that things like brand list exclusions, negative keyword placements, topics, etc., aren't actually as commonly used as we think they are. So 97% of accounts they found didn't use brand list exclusions. And I think it was about 58% of accounts didn't use any negative keywords. And what we can see, the impact of that is, so we're looking here, brand list exclusion. This is the volume of accounts. So again, people that did use them, people that don't. The number of campaigns. We're seeing that the people that do use brand list exclusions do have lower CPCs, higher CTRs. ROAS is pretty negligible, but conversion rate is lower and CPA is higher. So actually, not using a brand list exclusion appears much more efficient. Similarly with exclusions down here, we can have a look quickly. So we can see those who don't use any exclusions on their accounts for negative keywords, placements, or topics, lower CPCs, higher CTR, better ROAS, higher conversion rates, and more efficient CPAs. Now, don't try and hoodwink me with this question, okay? I think, looking at this data, it's important to think and say, well, if we're not excluding any brand terms, and if we're not excluding anything, could it be that the conversions we are getting perhaps aren't incremental? Perhaps they are low-hanging fruit, perhaps they are brand terms. And I think that's an important thing to think about. So I'm not standing here saying, do or don't use brand exclusions, do or don't use negative keywords, but I think, look at the data, it's by a case-by-case basis, really. The next one, this seems obvious, but again, the data might surprise us. Leverage audience signals and exclusions. So we can tame universal ad serving with audience signals and search themes. Why it's important that we tell the platforms up front, especially if we're creating performance max campaigns for the first time, or we're on an account that has no historical data. It's really important that we do give this information, in my opinion, up front to help save those learning phases and get that information and those quality conversions as quick as possible. But Optimizer, again, proving our assumptions wrong. So audience signals, let's just really quickly cover what they are. So when you're creating a performance max campaign or editing one that's already there, what you're able to do is set the demographics, life events, affinity audiences, custom audiences, etc., etc. Again, to kind of guide the machine learning towards the kind of people that you want to see your ad. Search themes, I think of them as very, very, very broad match keywords. So it's important that the search themes we use, you need to consider that they're not exact match. They're just a kind of indicative of the sorts of things people might be typing in, so they can be a little bit vague. So again, looking here, in fact, the majority of people do use audience signals and the majority of people do use search themes on their accounts. But what can we see? Well, again, we're doing a lot of data analysis here. I feel like Rachel Riley. So not as good looking, obviously. So CPCs are much lower. We are seeing lower click-through rates. ROAS, you could argue, is flat, but we are seeing higher conversion rates and lower CPCs when we don't use audience signals. Similarly, in search themes, we're seeing the people that don't use search themes, so not quite the majority of the accounts, about a third, that was terrible Rachel Rileying, much lower CPCs, stronger click-through rates, stronger ROAS, stronger CPAs, but interestingly, conversion rate is a lot lower as well. So some really interesting data here. And I think it's important as PPC people to really continue to test our assumptions, because again, it's easy to think, of course negative keywords work, of course audience signals, of course search themes work. But actually the data is showing, looking at almost 10,000 accounts, that might not be the case. Consider placement exclusions. So it's important that we reduce wastage and improve budget efficiencies with placement exclusions, again, particularly with Performance Max. Why? Not all placements are created equal. We want to optimize towards those high quality placements to deliver relevant traffic and to deliver relevant conversions. So one of the ways we can have a look at this is by looking at, when we're looking at Google, the when and where my ads appeared module, which we can see here. We can also, this is very exciting, you can now start creating reports in Google Ads. This is in beta at the moment, but you can just ask a question like we do with GA4. So where did my Performance Max ads appear? Or you can create a custom report. So again, with all of these things, we want to start looking as we would kind of analyze any data, but particularly with Performance Max, is there conversion volume? How is the conversion rate? What does that look like? If you work for like a bigger agency or you've been doing this a long time, you might just have a master list of topic exclusions and placement exclusions, which is really sensible. I think as well as excluding individual placements, so maybe some YouTube channels, for example, that aren't super relevant or might have kind of brand unsafe information on them. Another one is Candy Crush. Who here has played Candy Crush? Please don't make me, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I didn't want to have to say I was the only person that has ever played Candy Crush. But when you play Candy Crush and apps of that sort, in order to get like little boosts, I'm pretending I don't know, in order to get little boosts and stuff, you have to watch ads for like 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and then you get to skip a level or whatever. Again, pretending I don't know. What happens when people click the ads is actually it's more a case of kind of fat thumbs rather than any real intent. So as a default, me personally, I always exclude not all app placements, but game app placements, because again, you can drive traffic and you're paying for that traffic, but it's not going to be any good. Review your URLs. So again, defaults on Google Ads will contain all URLs. We want to add exclusions for irrelevant URLs. So instead of talking about where our ads appear, we're talking about where we send people when they click our ads. So add exclusions for irrelevant URLs to stop PMax driving traffic to the wrong places. So we might end up seeing, especially in that early learning phase, a lot of people visiting your add to cart pages, right? Google might think that's really indicative of someone that's going to convert. But actually, if they've not got any of the information up front, they're not going to convert and it's not going to work. Chris, I really appreciate your nodding. Thank you. You're really reassuring me. So why? Again, it's unlikely that all of the URLs on your website will be hyper relevant to your audience. And it's, again, unlikely that they'll all be conversion driving too. This one's more of a bugger, honestly, to do, and they don't make it easy. Even if you've been in PPC 10 years like me, or 20 years like some of the people in this room, or 2 years, this setting's a little bit hidden, but really you get the option to either enter every single URL on your website that you don't want ads to go to. That can be very tedious, especially if you have like an e-commerce website with hundreds of products. Or you can create rules. So depending on how your kind of URLs are created, if it's like product in them, you can remove all product pages, you can remove all pages that have cart in, checkout, etc. And those all can help too. So we're at the end, look at us. So a little bit of a recap. First of all, use your first party data to steer and guide the algorithm towards generating high quality and relevant conversions. Check and tweak your default settings to encourage strong performance from the get-go. Leverage audience signals and search themes to reduce those learning periods up front. Consider using negative keywords and brand exclusion lists to keep your ads highly relevant and also really tailored to your audience. Exclude those subpar placements to keep ad performance strong and to prevent appearances on brand unsafe content and brand unsafe topics. And review your URLs to drive high quality traffic and conversions. Does anyone want to put me on the spot? I'm very sweaty right now, so does anyone want to ask any questions?
Any questions? Yes, please.
Excuse me, regarding the optimizer research you talked about,
Oh, God.
were these factors about brand negative keywords, audience signals and search things, were they tested in isolation or were they tested in combination? Because I think if it's not tested in isolation, then there's going to be a mixture of all these different factors.
That's a very good point. I did not do the research.
Yeah, I know the lady who does the research, Nava Hopkins, who was one of our fantastic sponsors there. And I'll send that question over to her. We'll definitely make sure that you get an answer for that question.
Thank you.
For sure.
I wanted to ask a similar question because my gut feeling was if you haven't got brand exclusions, you're probably cannibalising other campaigns you've got. But if you haven't got a search campaign, a separate search campaign, you're not going to get the benefit of it. So basically, if you haven't got it negatived out and you've got nothing else, then of course you're going to do better because it's a blended result of both brand and non-brand. But if you're doing it properly, you're going to set up a separate search campaign, you're going to negative it out, and you're going to run it so you can identify your brand traffic versus your non-brand traffic. So
That's
to
what I
me,
was
it's a bit.
thinking.
So to me, it's a bit of a weird result because it doesn't. So the people that seem to know what they're doing, it's counterintuitive, but it could be the way that it's been set up.
Exactly, and I mentioned that too. Like, I think you can definitely ask the question, like, is it because everyone's going for brand instead, and that's why CPAs are cheaper and ROAS is better, you know? So I think there is that conversation, but we know Nava, she's brilliant at answering these questions, and she led the research and put it all together. She's definitely the go-to person to ask about this. But there's an article as well with it all in, which I can share somehow.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? All right, please give Sophie another amazing round of applause.
If you're just joining us, I'm Jyll Saskin Gales. I'm a Google Ads coach and the founder of the Inside Google Ads course, podcast, and this book. I'm thrilled to welcome you to yet another PPC Live Online, where we just heard from Sophie Fell about Performance Max. Next, I'm thrilled to introduce António Migel Lima. He'll be speaking to us today about marginal ROAS and budget redistribution. Let's have a look.
Thank you so much for the intro, Anu. This has potential to be like the most boring or really exciting talk of the day, depending on how much you love data and analytics for me. But yeah, I'm going to talk to you about like marginal ROAS, how to use that for budget redistribution, and how to leverage Google Ads bid simulations, which is what will enable all of that. But before that, actually the speaker intro, Anu said I won an award. I don't like to dwell too much on speaker intro. I'll do the same and just skip ahead of this slide, but yeah, some intro here. I want to start with what farming and marketing have in common. I know no one else has a mic, so I'm going to answer my own question, but my analogy is basically that similarly to agriculture, you can only plow the land so much. Especially with machinery, if you only have a few tractors, you cannot really have more people working the land than the tractors you have, for example. So if you have 2 tractors, why would you have 5 people working on it? You can only have 2. Those first 2 will be very productive for the company, but the third one will have to share a tractor, the fourth one will have to share a tractor, the fifth one will have to share a tractor between 5. And that's the concept I'm going to introduce today with Google Ads as well. Your first pounds, dollars, euros you spend on your campaigns can work very differently, can be a lot more productive for your company, for your marketing budget than the last pounds you invest on your campaign. Today we're going to uncover the concept of marginal ROAS. So often when doing PPC, people use average ROAS, which is usually just called ROAS. I invented the concept average ROAS to look into the performance of your campaigns. However, as I was mentioning before, like your pounds don't work all the same. So a marginal ROAS is just the returns you get from your next pound. So from someone who studied economics in high school, this is basically the concept of marginal diminishing returns. Your investment will yield different returns at different investment points. As your spend increases, often your return on that spend decreases due to saturation, competition, inefficiencies. And in the world of search, that's usually high correlated with impression share. For example, if you have a campaign with 90% impression share and another campaign with 10% impression share, both achieving the same ROAS, average ROAS as I'm calling it, if you invest an additional, say, £100 on each campaign, chances are they will work a lot harder on a campaign with 10% impression share because that campaign is not maxed out, whereas the 90% impression share campaign is already maxed out. So you don't want to pour that money into the 90% impression share, even though those two campaigns have the same average ROAS. So again, with an example, this could be how you invest your money in a campaign. Your first £1,000 will generate you £5,000 in revenue, so your ROAS is 500%. If you invest an additional £1,000, that additional £1,000 will get you another 3k in revenue. And if you invest yet another £1,000, that will only generate another 1.5k in return. So even though your average ROAS is 317% and perhaps your target across the organization is 250%, for example, so everyone is very happy about the performance of this campaign, it's achieving the targets, is above target, there's room to increase spend. Actually, your last 1k is not generating the return on investment that you want it to generate, so it's actually losing you money once you consider like how much it costs to serve those sales, the cost of products, etc. So you would be better if you invested 2k instead. So that's a concept. And because I like real life examples, I have another one, which is if you were to hire people but you only had one laptop, the first person you hire will be very productive. The second one will have to share the laptop, so maybe they can do, in my world, for example, some code pairing and they will still be relatively efficient, but the third person will probably only be looking at the other two. So they will marginally be less and less efficient as you add more people into your organization if you don't have the adequate materials, tech, desk, laptops, etc. to support those people. Yeah, that's really nice, great concept, but you can't really measure marginal ROAS, can you? I think you can. You can actually see gravity, but it still exists. I'm proud of that analogy, thanks. You don't see marginal ROAS in your platforms in the same way average ROAS. So marginal ROAS cannot observe, is a concept about something you haven't observed, whereas ROAS is something about an event that has happened, so it's more measurable, but that doesn't mean that you cannot drive the marginal ROAS of your campaigns. And actually, there's a few ways you could do that. In my view, there's at least 3, because I gave you the title of the talk at the beginning. You will see I will settle for Google Ads bid simulations, but I will quickly cover the other 2. So the first one is an experimentation. You could, in Google Ads, for example, run a drafts and experiments test, an A/B test, and say on one side of the campaign, my target ROAS is 500%, on the other is half of that, 250%. What happens to conversion value and what happens to spend on both sides of the experiment, and then your marginal ROAS on going from 250 to 500% is what your experiment is telling you. So what you observe in that experimentation will allow you to calculate basically the difference in conversion value from the A side of the test, targeting 500 ROAS, divided by a difference in conversion value on the A side of the test divided by the B side of the test. So that will be your marginal ROAS from point A to point B. The drawbacks is you can only really measure 1 point at a time. So in this example, you're measuring what's your marginal ROAS from 250 to 500, and you don't really have a full picture of all the potential marginal ROAS for each extra pound you spend. And it's a bit time consuming. You need to set up the experiment properly. You need to set up a drafts and experiments. There's a lot of things going into setting up this experimentation. The next method is statistical modeling. You could try to look into a set of inputs like how many impressions the campaigns have, what's their impression share, their impression share, how much spending goes into that, some market conditions, etc., and try to come up with an equation, with a regression that calculates how much value increases as you increase your spend. But I guess the challenge is you will be missing some key inputs. For example, you don't have access to the auction dynamics. You don't know how much your competitors bid for specific keywords at a given point in time. And some of those inputs that would be very valuable for your regression are only visible to the ad platforms. They won't be sharing that data with you as freely as you'd like, and also very time consuming until you get it right. Our solution for that problem is to leverage Google Ads campaign bid simulations. They've already did this for you. So if you go to the UI, you will see something like this for each campaign or portfolio bid strategy. And they will tell you, okay, last week your target was this point. If you increase your target from 150 to the next point, you will get X% more value and you will spend X% more. And your marginal ROAS at any given point in this curve will be the difference in conversion value from point A to point B divided by the difference in spend from point A from point B. And you can continuously calculate the marginal ROAS for each point in the curve. Is basically always the same process, the difference in conversion value between this point and the previous one, and the difference in spend between those 2 points. When you do this in the UI, it can be quite time consuming. Like some search accounts have hundreds, dozens, hundreds of campaigns, so it's not really efficient to go one by one. Maybe you could do for your top 2 or 3 campaigns every now and again. But you can also do this at scale by leveraging Google Ads API. So a part of the API that is called GAQL, which is basically Google Ads API query language. And you can just select the fields from the campaign simulation object. In this case, for target ROAS, you might also have target CPA or target impression share. You select that, you have some automation, some bit of coding running in the background that fetches that on a daily, weekly basis into, for example, your data warehouse. And now you've collected all this data into one central place, and you can do stuff with it that we're going to see in a second. So this is actually that data, all the simulations for a given account, already with some transformations applied on top of it. So each color here represents a campaign in one given account. And for the same campaign, you will see that there are many points for that campaign. Those represent one of these points in the Google Ads bid simulation. So, for example, if here we have 8 points in this curve, then those are the same 8 points we see, for example, for this green campaign. And because we now have this data internally in our data warehouse, we can apply transformations to that data. We have calculated for each point what's the marginal ROAS of those accounts. So we now have these available at scale in our BI tool, in our data warehouse for analysis, reporting, etc. And what we do with this in order to extract value from this concept of marginal ROAS is that we're going to rank all these points in the curve of all campaigns for the same account but instead of being on a campaign by campaign basis, we will now rank them all on an account basis. So this is the same data, actually the same colors for the same campaigns, but instead of being ranked campaign by campaign in isolation, now we've ordered them in descending order of marginal ROAS across the whole account. So you start to have an idea of at which point of spend in your account you're starting to hit marginal decreasing returns that you're not comfortable with, that are below the targets that you would like to achieve. And again, same data, slightly different colors. We now here have the representation of points in the curve that are not being currently targeted. So the gray ones would be any points on the campaign's curves except for the big one, whereas the blue ones are the points that we are currently targeting for different campaigns. And what's interesting about this, and this is some anonymized but real data from one of our clients, is that they are targeting some campaigns at the very lower end of this graph with really low marginal ROAS and some campaigns with really high marginal ROAS. And when you look at it, it doesn't really make sense. But if you dive deeper into it, you will see that some of these campaigns will have a very similar average ROAS. So there's some logic into the reason why the people optimizing that account have made those decisions. When they go into Google Ads, they see, okay, my average ROAS for campaign X at the bottom right and my campaign Y at the beginning is the same. I should keep the same targets for these campaigns, but because their marginal ROAS is completely different, they are missing out on some opportunities to be a lot more efficient across the account. So that's the concept, I guess. What do we do with it? And there's mostly two things we can do. One is to create like a sliding scale for key decision makers. So this has been really useful in conversations with like senior stakeholders, where we are using a wealth of data and really complex at times processing and calculations in the background, but we can create one single curve that tells them for any point in this curve how much you are expected to spend and how much your marginal ROAS will be, how much conversion value, how much spend you will have at any given point in the curve. So if you're comfortable with a marginal ROAS above 100%, you can choose the 10K, 9.7K point here, and you want to target that. If you're really keen on growing your business and at this point you don't really care much about profitability, you just want your average ROAS to look positive, but you're okay to commit to a marginal ROAS of 44%, you can target the point in a curve that will make you spend 20K and generate more value. So yeah, this makes the conversation with CMOs, senior stakeholders, very easy because you're just showing them one single curve and they have to make one decision. What's the optimal point for them that aligns with the business outcomes, the business KPIs that they want to achieve? And then secondly, for example, if they decide, let's actually spend the 13K, I like that 79% marginal ROAS, then there's a playbook behind that will tell them, okay, we've ranked all these points in the curve, you want to target 13K, this is the changes you need to make to all the campaigns in your account to make it the most efficient. So because we've ranked all these campaigns, we now know, for example, if we want to be at this point here, then this target ROAS here will need to decrease, and we probably have room to increase the target ROAS on this campaign here. And those calculations will be made in the background, and we will say, okay, for campaign 173, we need to increase the target from 540 to 625. For campaign 100, we need to decrease the target, and that's the most efficient way to get to the 13K point in the curve that you want to be at. Bringing it all together, leverage the Google Ads API to get all these simulations, all this data at scale in a place that you can then work with them, usually data warehouse, BI platform. And then you have all this data organized and transformed and ranked in terms of marginal efficiency. So you can actually use a wealth of data to show a really simple aggregate view of the world, to tell people how much do you want to spend, where's efficient in this curve, where you start to waste spend. And then when people make the decisions of where they want to be in this curve, you go back to your granular data that will suggest which adjustments to which campaigns you need to make in order to be at the most efficient point in the curve according to your own goals. That's mostly it. So a few takeaways, like your marginal ROAS, it's already hidden in plain sight. Just leverage Google Ads bid simulations and you can calculate it. Yeah, very important to bear in mind that your budget doesn't perform evenly. Your first £50 will generate a return that's very different from the next £50 you invest on the same campaign. So this marginal ROAS will expose what averages can't. This tool is nice because it's sophisticated enough for analysts. People will feel there's some science going on behind it, but it's also simple enough to drive a conversation with a C-suite senior stakeholder and just present them one simple curve about your return on investment. And finally, even though one of the applications is like this big picture strategy, you can actually make very precise decisions from the back of it and make very targeted campaign target changes to drive the outcomes you strategically want to drive. So Marginal ROAS is capable of playing in both fields, like high-level strategic and tactically as well. And that is it from me. Thank you very much. And yeah, any questions, let me know.
This is PPC Live Online. I'm your host, Jyll Saskin Gales. I'm a Google Ads coach and the founder of the Inside Google Ads course, podcast, and this book. We have one more speaker up for you today. Sem Tielemans will be telling us all about what's coming next for PPC. Let's find out.
Maybe good to slightly introduce myself also, since where is all the information that I want to share coming from. I work at Portio, and because of that, I have the privilege to work with tons of agencies. In my last couple of years at Portio, I've visited over 100 of them all across Europe. We do team and training sessions together with the agencies, and also I'm hosting a monthly webinar with Agency in Spotlight. We actually have one of my dear guests here, Anne Stanley, who runs an agency that's going on for 18 years already. So that's obviously where I get my information from. Now, about Portio, so for the guys who don't know us yet, we are a CSS partner, and we actually focus on helping advertisers to boost their shopping ads. We build easy and accessible tools for them to do so, and we do quite well. We work with over 800 agencies and 15,000 advertisers, so we have tons of data to work with, tons of learnings that we apply to our services, as well as learnings that we don't apply, which I'm also about to share. So what do we actually create for them then? Some of you might know our labelizer strategy. I've heard heroes and zombies before. That's coming from us. So we have a tool that segments your products based on performance, so you can allocate the right budget to them. As well as we have a platform where we give you options to also optimize your feed, so you'll have a better input for the AI algorithms such as Performance Max to showcase your shopping ads. Now, Some nice concepts that I work with the agencies is, for instance, where we get founders together and talk about what's keeping them up at night and what are their challenges in 2025 and maybe the years after. So I think there's some agencies on here that might sound familiar to you, but we also work with smaller agencies, actually of all different kinds of sizes, from the Netherlands and the UK. So a quick comparison between the two. I had a nice animation here, but it's already pretty much showing what I was about to tell. You guys still are better in football than we are in the Netherlands, proven by the 2-1 win in the Euro Cup last year. But I would vouch that we are better in serving beers because we actually add the accordion top of foam on top of them. If you argue against me, then it's probably because you're from England and you're biased. And then for the similarities, so both the UK and the Netherlands, we're very well developed in the PPC landscape. So it goes to show in the European Search Awards and the Global Search Awards, where there's always a lot of nominees from both the UK and the Netherlands. We host big industry events like Brighton SEO and the Hero Conference, and we in the Netherlands have Friends of Search. And we also have issues with privacy and attribution that's concerning us a lot. We have obviously automation increasing and some challenges in talent recruitment. So that's also nice for the PPC specialists here. How can you take a competitive advantage in your work and make yourself more valuable to your agency or if you're working on client end? And let's not hide the fact that I'm in sales. If the slides that I just showed you didn't already tell you that, you guys are also all in sales, right? You want to sell to your client what you think is best for them to improve their performance and what is needed to get more sales. So, if we're talking about sales, let's see what we can do in the near future to improve ourselves. Sometimes I find myself in argument with a true specialist that really did it all, in my opinion. So he looks at our solutions, he's like, yeah, that's pretty cool and all that, but I want to do more. I want to segment not just on performance, but also I want to segment on weather changing, on pricing data, on stock levels, on margins, and so on. And I think that's great. You can spend a lot of time to do so and really optimize the account, and then you hit the level where you did all that, but the client is still expecting more. And then what are you going to do? Because it seems like you did it all. Or what if you have another client that you can't spend the same hours on as you did on this client? What are you going to do for them? So I think in PPC we're heading towards a place where that part of campaign management, which we get a lot of good things and insightful thoughts to work on, but we hit a limit there. And I have two quotes here from two agency experts that I wanted to share with you, which are really underlining what I'm about to share with you. Let's go to the first one, Richard Hill. I'm just going to read them out loud. I'm sure you can read, but it's nice. In 2025, agencies need to double down on strategic thinking, with automation doing more of the heavy lifting. Clients are looking for partners who can interpret the data, challenge assumptions, and shape real growth strategies. Not just manage campaigns, but become a growth partner. Next up is Harry from Found Agency, Director of Growth. He said, in a privacy-first world, relying solely on last-click attribution no longer cuts it. Successful brands embrace customer-centric tests and calibrate strategies. Growth comes from channel-specific approaches that respect each platform's unique audience and purpose. By moving beyond last click, brands often uncover untapped opportunities, especially in emerging or less competitive spaces. Right, let those two sink in. And let me try to visualize to you guys what we did mostly to add value to our clients in the last couple of years. And that was, as you can see, a big share of campaign management. Small share of marketing strategy, some data management, attribution, a big share of reporting as well, and then some creatives. I think today, this is looking a lot more like this. So the value is actually way less in campaign management, since automation is obviously lowering the barriers there, making it accessible for almost everybody. And our line of business should be more focused on marketing strategy. Really think and understand the business of your client and help them to steer towards growth across multiple platforms. Use data management, right? So first-party data is a necessity. If you don't use it, you're flying blind in this world. And try to get that attribution fixed, since marketing journeys are more and more fractured. Value comes from way more sources than just Google Ads. And the agency that is able in connecting those dots will win in the long term. So, if I'm talking PPC and you're in being a PPC specialist, which I'm assuming you guys are, that campaign management was some sort of a safe place, something where you feel like you are in control and you can turn the buttons in your favor, and then, like I tried to explain before, you hit a cross point at some point, and you need to go into strategize data management, and that would require more collaboration. That would require you to be in touch with colleagues of you, other agents that manage multiple different channels. You need to collaborate a lot more with your clients. You need to understand what is their situation, what are their objectives, and what strategy suits that best. So, we're going to future-proof your agency. First things we should focus on are the shift from execution to data and automation oversight. So, data ownership and first-party strategies, said it before, here once more. Attribution, modeling, and cookieless tracking, with cookies going out of the window and GA4 just confusing a whole lot of people. You need to support your client in doing this way more efficient and show them where true value is at. And AI optimized ad structures. So use whatever you can, like Sophie just shared in Performance Max. If you just let Performance Max do all the work, is probably not in your best favor, probably more in Google's best favor, just going to have easy wins with branded search, or not, because there was also something to argue about. So yeah, search isn't there, but it's definitely changing. Performance channels alone won't cut it, and I think this is a really nice graph shown on Friends of Search from Spark Thorough that is actually trying to visualize where your audience is actually influenced compared to where most of your budget is going towards, right? So you can see Google still owns most of the share of your budget, but it's definitely not the channel where most of your audiences are influenced. So try to multi-touch your strategy and influence your audience in the right places. From another survey, the PPC survey, we've learned that in the last year, PPC specialists, 55% of them only do besides doing paid search, they also focus on paid social and YouTube ads. That means that almost half of the other PPC specialists are only focused on paid search right now. So there's the competitive advantage I talked about for you guys if you're a PPC specialist, because agencies also share that the biggest struggle for them is actually finding the right talent. So if you're the one that does both and does both well, you have a competitive advantage towards your peers. All right. Attribution will get even harder. So this is a statement here that tracking is broken. It's definitely very fragmented. You can't see your credited touch points. Try to help your client. Try to educate them and bringing in the business data you need to help them out, and to see if you can show that there's a comparison between soft metrics and hard metrics. If you can create a correlation dashboard where you can show what's where the audience is actually influenced before they go into Google Ads to get to the conversion. So there's definitely more journeys these days, right? TikTok Shop, which is brand new, private messaging, podcast discovery, social comments, and communities, which we also need to keep in mind. And an option could be, for instance, server-side tracking. Now, if you use AI, definitely make sure you use it in your advantage, right? And to do so, you need to feed it with the right data. With Performance Max, you're obviously lowering the barriers. That means that there's more competitiveness, and also costs go up. So make sure that you don't let AI do all the work, because it will prioritize easy wins like branded searches, while platforms push to justify ad spend. So again, make use of the right data, and that first-party data fuel your AI campaigns. Some practical steps. Let me quickly walk you through these. Enhance tracking and analytics with APIs and first-party data. Again, repetition. Use AI tools strategically for automation and optimization, for instance, Product Hero. Invest in customer insights to reduce cookie dependency. Here is obviously the server-side tagging coming back. Develop some frameworks for tracking influence and educate the client in that new metrics that matter. So not just where the conversion happens, but also where they're influenced, and go for that multi-channel approach. So steer away from only focusing on Google Ads for now. So also let's reflect a little bit back on what that brings us, Product Hero. Obviously, we've seen these challenges. We need to innovate as well to get there. So an important thing for us is, since we are trying to support the agencies and the advertisers and what they need to do, we also need to look into how can we help them to connect that business data that they have and make it accessible for their campaigns adjustment. Try to see if there's possible ways that we can get into that gap where ITP costs that 30% of the conversions are on track, make sure that the value is visible. That means that we're still part of the advertising cycle where your strategy and the product platform can, for instance, help you to create and update campaigns, gather insights for the performance, and improve them as well directly from there. So if you think, okay, very well, Sam, I'm not planning on going multi-channel anytime soon, I'm just going to focus on Google Ads and do what I can do there and focus on campaign management still, good for you. We will also try up and do our best to support you in that, like we do with staying ahead of the curve, try to continuously add ways that you can still make an impact on your campaign management, just as we did when we launched the Labelizer, the Product AI tool, and the Performance Marketing Insights we lately launched. As well as we are looking into ways of going multi-channel to also support you and make it easy and accessible to steer away from just Google, but also go into Microsoft, Meta, and perhaps TikTok. That is coming very soon. I'd like to close off again with the key takeaways of what I tried to get across here, and that is that the value of your agency and your work is shifting towards marketing strategy. Understand that your client is no longer just looking for somebody who can manage their campaigns, but for somebody who understands the business, business growth, and true value there. Data management. If you don't use first-party data, you're flying blind. So try to focus on putting the best possible information in, because the better the input, the better the outcomes, especially in this AI environment we're in. And then last but not least, attribution. Try to be the agency that can connect the dots, because that will let you win in the long term. My name was Sam Timons. Thank you very much for listening. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or join our newsletter. Thank you very much.
Wow, our 3 PPC Live Online speakers today have given us a lot to think about. I'm thrilled to now turn it over to a live panel with Sophie, António, Anu, and myself. Stick with us. This live panel is coming right up. In the meantime, if you have any questions at all and you're watching this live on YouTube or LinkedIn, please go ahead and type them into the chat, and we'll make sure our speakers answer them for you. Hello, and welcome to our live panel for PPC Live Online. I'm Jyll. I'm here with Anu, António, and Sophie, and we're thrilled to take the time to be here, extending the PPC Live IRL from Brighton into the online space on YouTube and LinkedIn today. So thank you all for joining us here.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, super exciting.
Wonderful.
Yeah, looking forward.
Yes. So the first question I want to ask everyone, we know, of course, that change is the only constant in Google Ads. And so I'm curious, António and Sophie, if you could share with us, what's something that either like a strategy or a tactic that you find yourself using in Google Ads over the last year that you didn't use before that? Like something new you've had to do in the last year to keep up with platform changes? Would you like to go first, Sophie?
I'm trying to think. This is the problem with on the spot panels, Jyll. I'm on the spot now and my mind's gone blank. Let me think. I think one thing that I've been more consistent with over the last year and more consistent in enforcing with clients and stuff is this capturing of data and having that more consistent data to really like drive what we're doing. I think, and when I was talking about Performance Max for PPC Live, we were talking a lot about bringing in that data and making sure that we are training the algorithms, not just to generate kind of volume, but like those high quality leads. So I think that's something that has always sort of been there, but I think in the last year has really made that big effort and really come to the fore a little bit more than probably the other 9 years.
Yeah. Absolutely, getting that good quality data in. What about you, Antonio? Something kind of newer you've been doing in the last year?
Yeah, I think Sophie just went on a similar direction I was going to with the tracking and the privacy, etc. So in order not to repeat, maybe I'll talk about something data related, but in terms of like taking data out of the platforms, like with search, you used to have like all the metrics available, as much granularity as you want to almost. And now with PMax, it being so new, something I notice is you have to put a really great effort to get the data out of Google Ads. The APIs are still being built. You need to use a mix of scripts, trying to use the API here, the UI there to get like those insights in an automated way at the fingertips of your teams, whereas before that seemed to be easier. But yeah, I guess it's a nice challenge, and me being more in the data space, I guess it's good to help give that competitive advantage to our teams.
Definitely, I can relate to that. I use scripts for the first time a couple months ago. I never had before, but I find it really helpful to get those more advanced capabilities that aren't necessarily there in the platform. Now, Anu, you report on all the changes going on in the industry. So I'm curious if you can share with us, you've been writing for Search Engine Land for a year now. Congratulations, by the way. So
Thank you.
all the updates you've written about over the last year, is there one that stands out to you that you were either most surprised by or most excited to share with your audience?
Oh, there's so many. Like, I feel Google, is always keeping us on the on our tiptoes. Even today, and not even Google as well. Even like today, Meta has announced that there's going to be a Threads ads. Threads ads is going to properly roll out. They started testing that in January, but that article is literally in the machine. Danny's gonna, my manager's gonna start it live. But we go specifically, for Google, like maybe PPC wise, there's been several stuff with PMax, Sophie. And in fact, one thing I was hoping that we'll get to is like how our clients' relationship with negatives now, because this year we had the whole, Google allowing there to be, it went from 100 to 10,000. They shifted how many negatives you could
from
add
0 to
in your
100 to 10,000.
Yeah, almost like that was 0, 100, 10,000. You're like, okay. And and with Google, this is not even like an evil Google thing. Google will go after Google's revenues. I mean, what they're a company. Then what do I would want them to do? They're not trying to make you money. They're trying to make Google money. So it's not even like, I mean, they could try to help us a little bit more than they do. But so even something like that, it does make me think, but what's in it for Google? What does that mean? Does it actually mean that PMax is very all over the place, that even 10,000 exact, negatives isn't going to really make a difference for them, kind of thing? So they were like, we can push that control, a little bit more for advertisers, and make it seem like if we're giving them such a huge thing, when for them it's probably nothing, not that much. And so I would also like us to discuss, like, are we holding PMax back a lot with all these, because we went to be like, they had no controls. They gave us, quite a bit of controls, but actually does PMax work better with less controls?
I probably have a controversial opinion about this. So I want to
Go
go to our
ahead,
panelists.
Jyll. We'd love to
That's
hear
actually
it. We wanna
Sophie
hear it,
first as
Jyll.
well. Sophie spoke about PMAX today. So what do you think, Sophie, of these evolutions that have happened in PMAX, where PMAX in 2025, still kind of a black box? We have way more transparency and control than we used to. What do you make of these new features?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think we were all around in like 2021 when this first came out. And I think another really interesting thing is that while Google has been better to us as advertisers in the sense of giving us more, Microsoft's kind of gone the other way because now they're restricting how we can add negative keywords and that like functionality as well, which is really interesting. I think I do think Google have been quite good at listening to advertiser feedback. I do think it's helpful. I mean, Anu, like you're saying with the negative keywords, like, does anyone need like 50,000 keywords, negative keywords? I don't know.
Probably not.
But I think, you know, when I spoke about this on PPC Live as well, like the research that Optimizer and Nava did as well, again, shows that actually maybe you don't need to have, you know, even audience signals and search themes, which to me would be something I would really cling on to. And that was really interesting seeing the data that might not, you know, be for the best necessarily as well, let alone brand exclusions, topic exclusions, page exclusions, content suitability settings, you know, all that as well. So I think although they are giving us a lot, you know, I don't know how clear it is to everyone and the industry, like, you know, what you should use and what you actually need to use and what you can get rid of, which is why I think this optimizer data is so interesting.
And what about you, Antonio? You know, there have been a lot of these new developments in Performance Max giving us more data coming out of what it's actually doing, a little bit more control. What do you make of these developments? Are you using them, or do you still think of PMax as like this black box AI, let it just do its thing?
I think like with PMax, it opens a different world in terms of measurement as well. Because like with search, you can really, or you can moderately rely on like a click-based attribution system. And now with PMax, I think some of the challenges is even if like data-driven attribution is powerful and Google can take into consideration impressions, etc. Like you're also targeting people on different types of assets and creative. So I think you need to rely back on things like incrementality testing and marketing mix modeling to truly measure it. So yeah, I would be interested in seeing like some research on how that compares to like the platform metrics at scale. And that's like, maybe I wonder if some of the feedback comes from in these like new controls that PMax allows from advertisers saying, okay, even if the platforms are saying these campaigns are working very well according to our Google platform numbers, my in-house team doesn't see any sales coming from it. So like I need to adjust, etc. So yeah, I definitely think it makes it more challenging in terms of measurement because like the platform metrics are not as reliable as they were in the past just for search, I think.
It's true. It's definitely true. Something, you know, I said I have an unpopular opinion. Like I was really surprised that we could like add negative keywords to PMax. And, you know, with demand gen now you can see the channel breakdowns. And I'm like, why is Google doing this? I know we always ask for more control and now we're getting more control, but in my opinion, it sort of like defeats the whole purpose of Performance Max, which is supposed to just be like, give us your budget, your goals, your assets, and we will maximize your performance. And I guess either not enough advertisers were doing that or it was not doing that enough. So Google was like, okay, we have to give some control back. So that tension I find so interesting to see how in some parts of the platform we are getting more control and transparency, but in others, you know, it's taken away. Like anyone who's looked at a search term report recently and how much you can't see, can see that this is a pendulum that really swings. So definitely something to keep an eye on in Google Ads. Speaking of which, something I always like to ask Google Ads practitioners when we talk about keywords, we know that exact is no longer exact and phrase is no longer phrase, and broad likes to get out there and have a good time. So curious, as you're looking at your keyword-based strategies in Google Ads, at least as long as we still have keywords in Google Ads, is there a certain match type that you tend to favor, or how are you thinking about your keyword-based strategies in 2025? Maybe Antonio, do you have a perspective on this from kind of a data and measurement point?
Yeah, I think something we've been trying to do at our agency is actually like kind of a product we use that we developed in-house, which we're calling like search space analysis, which is basically using large language models to analyze the semantic relationship between different keywords from different campaigns and then plot it on a two-dimensional map. And like, I think this is something people have been doing for ages, like seeing if your keywords are being duplicated on different campaigns, etc. But what we've been able to do with this tool is to understand if like similar-ish keywords are being triggered by different campaigns, and then see clusters of themes being triggered by different campaigns and other clusters of themes being triggered by multiple campaigns, and gives like this visual look into like our search team of how they should reorganize the keywords within their campaigns based on the semantic meaning of those keywords. So yeah, I think is really important time to use something like this, because like with PMax now triggering on search as well, with different types of keywords not meaning exactly what they used to mean in the past, is good to like get back to the basics and seeing if you have multiple campaigns bidding on the same thing or very similar things unintentionally, and giving that control back to the teams on how they want to structure and make sure that their campaigns they want to trigger the right keywords are triggering that, making sure that the right landing pages are being associated with the right keywords, etc.
Very interesting use of AI in campaign management.
Yeah,
Sophie, I'm curious for you how, keyword-based strategies used to be the foundation of Google Ads. Now it feels like the forgotten part of Google Ads. How are you thinking about that with your teams in 2025?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question. I don't want to say it depends. It does depend a little bit. It depends a little bit. My default is still, I think I call myself a PPC fundamentalist. I still am like an exact and phrase match girly. Because I don't trust broad still, and I have tried multiple times and I've just not had the like results I've needed to personally to like justify kind of really using broad. So I still very much start with phrase and exact match. I think you were mentioning as well, like we're not having as many insights in the search terms reports. It is getting harder. It is getting harder. I think we are seeing a shift, at least at Lib with our clients, where Performance Max is probably using a bit more budget than search was. I think we're seeing that shift a bit more. Sorry, so I feel like the keyword bit is coming a little bit redundant. I think it will always still be there, but I think with the way we can kind of all see Google Ads continuing to evolve over the next like 5-10 years, it may not be as crucial as it once was. But I think for me, when starting new campaigns and search campaigns, I'm still phrase and exact, and then let's see what the data says and kind of go from there.
Interesting. Yeah, my approach has been similar in some ways. Sarah's and a little bit different. I'm more now like either we have the budget and data to go with broad, or we have like the small budget and the lack of data that we need exact. And I haven't been using phrase as much. I would say around like 2021, 2022, I'd always say like start with phrase, it's your Goldilocks, and then figure it out from there. And now I've kind of flipped that on its head, and I'm like, well, phrase is sort of like, it doesn't have all the benefits if you buy into them, of course, the broad match does, but then it's not as tight as exact. I don't know. So for me personally, I'm either like exact or like go big or go home, go exact or go broad. But it's one of the many things I love, bringing different people in the industry together. We all have different experiences and different strategies, and it's so nice to get to be able to share them and learn from each other here. So, go ahead.
Sorry, Jyll. Yeah, and can I mention I have some like a bit of annoying feelings about the match type case. they give us this 3 match types, and it's supposed to be tight, medium, very, very loose. And then they made exact loose. There is no tight match type. So
Are you
there's
calling
very
exact
much
slutty? Is that what I hear on it?
very, very, very slutty. She's not prude anymore. She just lets everyone in these days. Okay, let's stop that and stop making it a she. I apologize.
That was my fault. I'm sorry.
God, we went on a tangent there. Exact match. Yeah, Google just, I think, messed around too much with exact match and just made it such a, well, yeah, no point in using phrase anymore. And actually, I'd rather stop giving us the choice of phrase, because you want it to either to be a little bit tight or very loose. And so yeah, exact match is not quite exact, but it gives you less. It draws in a lot less than what broad would. And then there's broad. So it really comes into the whole, what's the point of phrase? Well, as you were talking, I was thinking, oh, but maybe you'll start with, if you have smaller budgets, but then if you have smaller budgets, you just go to exact, because it's not going to be exactly exact. It's still going to give you a little bit of room. And then if you have a lot of a budget, you go for broad. So I'd really like Google to come up and actually ask us, give us what does, should I ask Ginny that at SMX Advanced in June?
Ask her what?
Yeah, like, what's the point of phrase? Please, Ginny, you let us know.
Don't give them any ideas, Anu. Search Max is coming, and then who knows if we'll have any keywords left.
Yes, so yeah, Search Max. It was when you were asking me which is my favorite update, my brain was fighting in between all the PMax stuff and Search Max. So yeah, I'm still very much on the heels of figuring out what actually they plan on doing with Search Max, and whether it's a match type or more of a campaign type. Greg Finn figures out it's more like of a campaign type, but something different to Performance Max, but in that kind of line.
Well, it's definitely good branding. We'll see what the functionality looks like after.
Right.
We do have a question from our live audience here. Andre asks, is it my perception, or are there still many agencies that are reluctant to test and adapt to new strategies? How do you change this mentality? So I'll speak to this first and then welcome everyone else here as well. I definitely see that there are some agencies out there who are reluctant to adapt to new strategies, or maybe reluctant to adapt new tools, because I think some agencies see that as a threat to them. It's like, oh, if AI can do all this stuff, does that mean we don't need as many people? Does that mean still to add value? And I would say, I coach many agencies and team leads, and in order to keep clients and get new clients, I think agencies have to adapt to new strategies and test new things and be willing to be vulnerable enough to say, whether you're an agency or freelancer, you know what? Maybe the thing I've always been doing could be better. Maybe I can do even better for my clients. Maybe I could try something new. For example, there's one agency client I'm working with who, when they came to me, like, their thing was SCAGs, exact match, manual CPC. That's how they'd always done things. It had always driven great results for their hundreds of clients. And then in kind of mid 2024, they just noticed across the board a lot of things not performing as well as they used to. And so we've been working together on, consolidation, testing phrase or broad match, when you have conversion-based bidding, making sure we have conversion tracking everywhere. And some accounts, it works really well right away. Some, it takes some time to work well. But what I said to them is, like, I respect the fact that you're like, you know what, we think we can do better. Just because we are experts and have always done it one way, that doesn't mean the learning stops there. And so I think that mentality can really help agencies thrive. Sophie, I know you lead teams at a few different agencies, so I'm curious what you think of Andre's question here.
Yeah, and I think it's twofold, actually. I think part of it is that historical background and experience. So again, like, even that conversation there, right? We all have different histories with certain keyword match types and which ones work best for us and that kind of data. And we all have our, I suppose, biases in that way because of that. And I think that's one part of it. The second part, as someone who has worked for lots of agencies, is that sometimes it is client-led. I will just hold my hands up and I'll say that. Sometimes, I mean, even now in 2025, I'm trying to convince certain clients to come away from 100% search and consider testing Performance Max. And I think So although, you know, it would be amazing for every agency to have all the big clients that have all the money and all the data and all that kind of stuff, that's not the reality of the industry we work in. And I think there are some that, you know, maybe still don't trust PMax. And that was one of the inspirations for me actually putting the talk together, right? Because people still today aren't ready, or they don't have the volume of data we need for conversion-based bidding strategies, and they don't have, you know, a CRM or a CRM set up properly too. So I think it comes from two things. I think, again, the agency and the people within it, their own background and history with doing things the way they do, but also client limitations as well that may kind of hold back that innovation sometimes too.
Definitely. Antonio, do you have anything to add here from your experience?
Yeah, I guess like for me, I've only joined an agency in August 2024, and I've been like in-house for the 10 years prior to that. But what made me go for the agency I work for at the moment is that it has like data and technology at the forefront. So we don't consider ourselves like necessarily just like a performance marketing agency, but as a tech and performance marketing. So yeah, I think innovation and like constantly trying to create new things and disrupt how things are done is what made this opportunity interesting for me. So yeah, I definitely think you need to adapt, and if you do the same thing for the next 10 years, what's now very innovative, in 10 years it won't be. Also for me personally, even like my role now is mostly like leading a team of data analysts and data scientists and like dealing with clients, but I want for me to personally have always like one project that I can work as an individual contributor to make sure like that I am not like that I keep up with the developments and new trends in industry and data and like so many things that are happening with AI. So yeah, definitely I think you ever need to be more open-minded, more innovative, otherwise like you'll be outdated very quickly.
Wonderful. Well, I have one more question for our panel before we sign off for today. So speaking of keeping up to date in the industry, I'd love our panel to answer how you keep up to date with all the changes in Google Ads. And we'll go to Anu first. Anu, I know you break a lot of the news. So how do you, who breaks the news, keep up to date on the latest and greatest in our industry?
Too many newsletters. My inbox. God help my inbox. And I'm on LinkedIn a lot. Yeah, because I do get one thing. I don't know whether Google has done this on purpose or not, but there's definitely been more of a trend of it's advertisers who are noticing issues, or the advertisers are noticing updates and new things, and they'll put things to test, and some are hustle bros, but some are also genuine, practitioners who are like worried and they've not seen this new update, and so they'll say like, oh yeah, this new reporting functionality, or I saw this new way of even like when the channel controls came out, we knew that it was announced by Google that it was coming. It was an expert in the US, Greg Collar, you probably know him, Jyll, it was on his profile that we're like, oh okay, it's live kind of thing. So yeah, before I used to be told off for being on social media so much. Now it's my job to be on social media to keep up to date. So yeah, look at how times change. So a lot of being on newsletters and updates on just on the news, being online a lot. That's why when I go on holiday, I try to do a proper detox of not being on anything. So yeah, being online.
Very nice. And Antonio, how do you keep up to date with industry news and changes?
I guess a bit of different things. Like LinkedIn is a great source. We have internally a Slack channel that's called What's New. People share things in there. We have like PPC agency Breaky, which like monthly people share some updates as well. also, like sometimes, like with some of the clients we work with, we're involved in like betas and alphas, which is like a great way to really understand a new topic in depth. Like you're collaborating with Google and a client on the early days of a new feature. So yeah, a mixed bag of different things.
What about you, Sophie?
Same, honestly. Newsletters, being on LinkedIn religiously, Slack channels, WhatsApp groups, you know, of course. All those things. I think, I will generally see something on LinkedIn first and then click and find out what the heck's going on. One thing that apparently is controversial, I don't know that it should be, but I do think that doing your Google exams is still important. Doing your Google exams and doing your studies, I think it is still important. I get that, you know, do them once a year. Lots of people think they're easy to pass and there's not that much value in them, but I personally still find value in that studying process each year and doing the exam, because I do feel like I learn a couple more nuggets or a few more things, or even just Google's perspective on things, which really helps too. I mean, when we're doing the exams, sometimes it's not like necessarily common sense, and it's like, what would Google's answer? What did Google want you to say? And getting in that mindset is helpful. But I do still think personally there is value in the exams and studies as well still.
That's an interesting perspective, because I agree. I also do them every year to maintain partner status, and sometimes they're very out of date. But seeing how Google talks about things and what the Google right answer would be is very helpful as we're trying to keep up to date and figure out where the platform is going. Well, thank you to Sophie and Antonio and Sem as well for sharing your perspective IRL and online. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. I will turn it over to Anu to sign us out.
Well, thank you, Jyll. I'm so grateful that you lead this fantastic chat that we have. We're going to have our next in-person event in June 26th in Leeds. So we're going up north to our north folks in here in the UK who are like, I need to bring it up north. London is too far. So yeah, we're going to do that. So please, go on ppc.live to get all your up-to-date information, or subscribe to our newsletter to make sure you're the first to know about them. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us for another event, and you'll see you again for PPC Live 16 online again for sure. Thank you.